And to think that therefore the more lamas we meet, the more wrongs we've taken, the more, teachings we've attended, that makes us better and better practitioners. But always is the mind, the heart-mind transforming or not? Is the brain getting filled with more and more categories and names and intellectual speculations and ideas and just stuck up there? Or is the heart mind really, really changing, transforming, becoming liberated? This is something we have to ask ourselves, especially after several years of practice. Are we actually nicer people? This is what we have to ask ourselves, especially in family. Does your mum think you're nicer than you used to be? Or your dad? Isn't it? Do your friends think you're nicer? Do your enemies think you're nicer? When you go into the FRO, how do you manage? This is the point, Are we actually becoming nicer? As His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, we have to cultivate the good heart. Is our heart becoming more good? Or just more proud? More self-satisfied? The elixir is to be drunk. To be drunk and then allow its incredibly nourishing properties to pervade every cell of our being, so that we are transformed. We cannot transform if we merely think about it and memorize it, and it all stays up in the head. And as I say, we could have a row of beautiful vessels of many different kinds on our mantelpiece, on our shrine. This is where we usually put our beautiful jeweled vessel, on the shrine. And then we make offerings, we bow down, we circumambulate. Oh, wonderful vessel, please purify my mind. Please help me and all sentient beings to be free, beyond suffering, and to be happy. Oh, great vessel, you are so beautiful. And that elixir is so sparkling. Please, please save all of us, here and now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Oh, Mani Padme. What can the vessel do? The vessel's only a vessel. You have to take the vessel and drink the elixir. Then maybe something will happen. Truly, unless we drink the Dharma, cannot help us. We have to drink the Dharma and become the Dharma. Otherwise, truly, we are imprisoned. We are imprisoned in our narrow box. Even if that box says, I'm a Dharma practitioner and I'm very sincere. Still a box. So, The basic idea is to get out of the box, okay? Even if it's the most beautiful, elaborate box in the world, it's still a box. All boxes are boxes. Are there any questions? No, you don't have a question after all that.
Is compassion a way to go straight for the elixir and not mind the dog, not mind the vessel?
Well, I think the elixir contains lots of compassion. So certainly, as you're drinking the elixir, yes. Compassion is very important because compassion doesn't have to do with any particular jhana. Doesn't have to do with any particular religion. It doesn't have to do with any particular spiritual path. It is the essence of all of that. So if we can genuinely open our hearts to compassion rather than just go away and think about it and analyze the different levels, if we can actually become compassionate, yes, that is the same as drinking the elixir.
Hi. Oh, sorry. You talked about cultivating the heart mind, and my question is, when you have, this question might be a little early, but when you have a conflict between what your wisdom says and what your heart says, how do you go about dealing with that? With if your wisdom is telling you one thing, but your heart and your intuition, your feelings telling you another thing, how do you go cultivating them together?
Well, I think in this case you're thinking your heart in the sense of your emotions. When I'm talking about heart-mind, I'm talking about the very essential primordial awareness of which is our true nature, which would, in the best of circumstances, be allied with your intuition. If the very depths of your being are really telling you one thing, I'd listen to that, because the heart is, in the sense of the emotional side of us, is very fickle. You know? I mean, you fall in love with somebody and you know this is the one, and then next week you've discovered it's not the one. But your heart told you it was. Your common sense said, whoa there, watch out.
One question about the vessel. How to prevent to be too attached to it? Like some people say, take every time a different road, so you get not attached to drive the same road and get blind for the street signs. And I think like the vessel is now the tradition, and what you mean the elixir is like the Dharma. And how do you think can you do it? Like if you're more into it, then you are more with the tradition. It's like you're a little bit bound, connected. Like you can get it delivered, and then you have it.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but as I was saying, tradition in itself is not the problem. Tradition is the vessel which is holding the elixir, and we need something to hold the elixir. Whatever vessel we use, we need something to hold. And so the tradition is that which holds. And that's fine. Everything needs to be held. I mean, you know, it's the cup which is holding. The problem comes when we become obsessed with the cup and we forget the liquid. You see?
Yeah, and do you have an idea of practicing to be not attached to this so much?
Oh yeah, I mean, meditation by rights should help us to let go. I mean, genuine meditation is all about learning how to let go of the various layers of identification and our clinging.
Thank you.
But for that, you need a tradition which is a valid tradition, which you see, the reason why we need tradition, one of the reasons, many reasons, one is because it has shown in the past, for maybe 1,000 years or all the way back to the Buddha, it works. And why throw out something that works? The tradition is not the problem. The problem is when we are so attached to the tradition that we forget what the tradition is there for. The tradition is to be used. So, as I say, it's like a cup. You know, you get fascinated by the cup and you forget about drinking the liquid in the cup. That's when the problem comes. It's not the cup. It's the over-evaluation of the cup, forgetting that its only function is to contain the liquid. Don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-tradition, but sometimes people get so into their tradition and they forget that it is only a tradition, which is just containing the truth, but it's not in itself the truth. Do you understand?
Yes.
Good.
So, I'm wondering why focus on the box when you're talking to...
Sorry?
You're talking to a crowd which is 90% secular Westerners, and you're talking about the box, which I understand is something more about religion and rules of religion.
Well, no, it's about how we see ourselves. Everybody's in a box. You think you're a man. You think you're American, Australian, whatever. You think, I used to be like this, I come from this family, my father's like that, my mother's like this, I'm so-and-so, I've done this, I've done that. In my opinion, green is a horrible color, but I'm kind of interested in puce. I mean, we all have, you know, and this is who I am. This means me. That's the box. We can't think out of it. We cannot see. We can use the box, but we are not the box. Do you understand? And so the whole of the Buddha Dharma is to break the box, even while you make use of the box. The Buddha said, I too use conceptual language, but I am not fooled by it. Whereas the rest of us are fooled. That's our problem.
So my question, I didn't hear the question. I'm over here. Sorry. I didn't hear the question over there, but it kind of answered me what I was wondering. Is when you were talking about your friend who was trying to be Tibetan, which is a concept to be Tibetan, but then to just go back to being herself, which maybe she was American, but which is also a concept.
Yes, it is, but it's a closer concept than trying to be somebody else. At least when she starts meditating, she's dealing with her present ideas rather than a superimposed another idea which she's doing on top of that. You know, the thing is that we imagine if we can just be somebody else that will solve our problems. But it doesn't solve anything. You're just playing a role which is not even, you know, you're just playing a role. Of course we're all playing roles, but at least get back to our original role and deal with that one first.
So a lifetime of these ideas, memories that we have gathered, it will take a long time to be liberated?
It depends. So some people can see through it immediately. Other people, it's like peeling an onion. You get rid of one layer and you get to another layer, and you reel that layer, and then you reel that layer. So it depends on your karma and your perseverance. But the important thing is to recognize that although we live in the world of appearances and concepts, which is fine, it's not who we really are. I mean, this is, as the Buddha said, like a dream. In a dream, you very tightly cling to your ideas and whatever is happening. If it's a frightening dream, you wake up with your heart beating. But it doesn't mean that the dream was real, even though your body is also responding to your dream. When you wake up, the moment you wake up, oh, that's just a dream, right? Then usually you fall back to sleep. But anyway, the point is that we think that dreaming in sleep is sleep. Now we are awake. But from a Buddhist point of view, we're still asleep. The Buddha means one who is awake. And so what we're trying to do is wake up from the dream which we are dreaming of our delusory appearance and thinking that who we think we are is who we really are. Because we are not who we think we are. That's just the ego giving labels. So some people wake up from that very quickly. Most people, it takes a lot of effort. Because as soon as we get even an insight, a flash, then the ego takes over and says, wow, that was interesting. Now I'm really getting somewhere. Wow, probably by next week I'll be enlightened. You know? And then you're back again. This is a problem. But, I mean, since from the beginning we have all been Buddha, it's just a matter of coming back to where we've never really left. So nothing is hopeless. Somebody described it like, my only thing about this is it makes it sound very concrete, but he said it's like a jewel, a very, very, very precious diamond, and it's covered by thick mud. Thick, thick, thick gunk, actually. It's been in one of those, you know, sort of mud things and garbage. And so somebody hands this to you and says, look, this is very precious. And you look at the garbage and you think, precious, you're joking. You know, and so you know, even if you start trying to scour off a bit, you know, underneath it's more gunk and then more gunk, and you think, forget it. There's nothing precious about this. But all the time at the center is this big diamond, which is not in any way contaminated or polluted by the dirt. So if we keep trying to really get through it, some people, you know, really cutting in, some people just rubbing it, but however, eventually the diamond is always there. It's never going to change. And so to think that, you know, we are all the garbage is missing the point at all, because actually no matter how much garbage there is or how little garbage there is, at the center of it all is the diamond.
So I've been meditating since I was a small child, since I was 9 years old. And the kind of meditation that I've done, you know, I linked in with what's called like the collective conscience, which is like feeling all people everywhere. And it's very blissful. I'm wondering, is this what the elixir is? Where it's the linking in with all people, all sentient creatures everywhere. And that's what the elixir, the blissful feeling, the love for all things, is that what that is?
Okay, I'm going to get a slightly bit technical here because I don't really know. According to the Buddhist analysis of the consciousnesses, there are 8 main consciousnesses. That is the 5 sense consciousnesses, the eye consciousness, the ear consciousness, tongue consciousness, etc. Then the 6th, which is the mind consciousness. Then there's the 7th, which basically links the mind consciousness with the 8th consciousness. I'll go to the 8th consciousness but I can come back to the 7th. The 8th consciousness is called in Sanskrit the Alaya Vijnana. Alaya means a store, as in Himalaya, right? Himalaya, a store of Hima, of snow. And in Tibetan that's translated as Kunji. Kunji means like a basis, a foundation. And so the 7th consciousness it goes like this. The 6th consciousness, the 8th consciousness, they kind of, in the middle bit is the 7th consciousness, which is the one from which arises the sense of self, or the sense of ego. And the 8th consciousness this is where it gets tricky. You see, the 8th consciousness, when we do shamatha meditations, calming meditations, it's like going in the ocean, right? Usually we're on the surface of the waves. Then as our meditation deepens, it goes down and it goes through all these weird kind of fish that you see, and plants, and people get all sorts of experiences, and it's all very fascinating, this whole sub-world, which we normally never access. Now we're going through all the way down, and then you reach the bottom. And that is this alaya vijnana, this kunji, the substratum consciousness. Now, the substratum consciousness, I'm interested in this, sorry, I'm going on. The substratum consciousness gives a sense of universal consciousness. It gives a sense of great clarity, tremendous peace, very, very blissful. And, for example, in the Buddhist day, it was usually regarded as liberation. But the Buddha said, no, this is still part of our mundane consciousness. It's not liberation. So beyond that very vast, open, spacious kind of consciousness called the subconsciousness, the substratum consciousness, a whole other level of awareness and consciousness is what in Tibetan is called Rigpa, pure primordial consciousness. Now that is not the substratum consciousness, that is beyond the substratum consciousness. And that consciousness is the nature of who we are, and is usually compared with, say, the sky, because it's vast and it has no center and it has no circumference and it's all pervading like space. That level of consciousness has no sense of duality, it has no sense of self or other, and it is considered to be the ultimate nature. The problem is that even in technical descriptions, it is sometimes very difficult to know what is being described, whether it's the substratum consciousness or this pure awareness, which is beyond the substratum consciousness. I was once present when Daniel Goleman actually asked one very high Lama what was the difference, because how they describe sounds the same, but the Lama wouldn't answer. He said all these very, very high questions, and let's just get back to Mundro. And I was very sorry, because I thought this is indeed, every time you read the text, this is a very important question. What is the difference? How do you know when you're in a state of Rigpa or when you're just in a state of Kunji? And actually, Alan Wallace, who is a great authority and is now writing many books on shamatha, in one of his translations of Nyingma Terma Dujong Lingpa, he goes into this quite a bit. And he himself doesn't always know, reading the text, whether the Lama is speaking about that basis consciousness, which is in itself very vast and clear and blissful, and you feel interconnected, or this other primordial pure awareness called Rigpa. So I don't know is the answer. I can't tell. I think this is when one really needs to go away and talk with a very high Lama and see what he thinks. But what we're trying to do is to get beyond the conceptual mind. And this is why the Buddha said that even though you do shamatha, this calm awareness, and you get to this very deep level, in itself it is not liberation. Then you have to start doing vipassana, then you have to start analyzing and really looking and questioning and learning how to get beyond still this realm of a conceptual mind, even if it's a mind which at that point has no thinking. It's still caught, it's still in the ocean, still a part of the ocean, it hasn't gone beyond the ocean.
Excuse me. Once I was reading a very nice yellow book. It was written there is two ways to get realized. One is by dissolving winds into central channel. One is by recognizing natural state of mind. What would you say?
Well, if you can dissolve the winds into a central channel, you'll probably recognize the nature of the mind. It's a quick way of doing that. I mean, in the end, you have to recognize the nature of the mind, but from the tantric point of view, as long as we're in our conceptual thinking, then they're running in the other channels. They are not running through the central channel. The central channel is blocked. So either one can do the practice to recognize the nature of the mind through strict practices like Mahamudra or Dzogchen, Shamatha, Vipassana, you can do these practices which are for opening up the central channel and bringing the bindus up and opening the chakras, in which case, when you get to the heart center, naturally you will realize the clear light nature of the mind, and that's it. So this is why Tibetans, when they do retreat, usually do both, because they support each other. But the aim is the same. The aim is to recognize the clear light nature of the mind.
How to know the difference between the culture aspect and the philosophy?
Difficult. Difficult. How to recognize the difference between the cultural nature and the philosophical. But the point is that the philosophy, even though sometimes it's culturally, ensconced, the real philosophy is timeless. Okay. I don't want to touch anything in case I'm going to hit the clock. Okay, this we say, what is this? You will say, it is a clock, right? So then, well, which part of it is the clock, right? Is it this part? No, that's the outer shell. Well, is it the digits? No, those are the digits. Well, is it the face? No, those are the face. Well, how about the machinery inside? And then we keep taking the machinery apart and looking for the clock. You can never find a clock in itself. Only you can find a designation which we have all agreed on to slap on the level and say it's a clock. If I put it under here, that clock now becomes a stand. Right? So that's what the philosophy is all about. It's about taking our ordinary conceptual thinking and showing how that's all it is. It's just conceptual. And leading on and on and on until we begin to recognize that nothing, either clocks or people, have any real self-existence from their own side. They're only designated conceptual thinking. You can never find the thing in itself. That has nothing to do with India 2,000 years ago or Tibet today. It's how things are. And most good philosophical thinking is concerned with letting us understand, really analyze things which normally we take for granted. To see that things are not at all the way we normally think they are. To open up the mind and break down the boxes. Isn't it?
So, by this mean, what is the need for the rituals? The essence and circle?
So, considering that, what is the use of rituals? Well, if you asked the Great Lama, he would give you a very different answer. I think that one thing I have always thought about the Tibetans is that they are not stupid. And if they have done something like rituals and some other practices which they have done for 1,500 years, it's because they know they work. If they didn't work, they wouldn't bother to do it. So therefore, and we know these things work because when these great masters, all of whom have done enormous amounts of ritual, which by rights they don't need to do because they're already staying in the nature of the mind, but still they do rituals, so there must be a good reason for it. When they die, then, when you cannot cheat, right? You cannot force play. I mean, when they die, the signs that they get at the time of dying are just extraordinary. I always feel the Tibetans are the world's leaders in the art of dying. Because the great masters, and that doesn't just mean lamas, but any sort of genuine practitioners, male or female, they die in extraordinary ways, like normally people don't die. And that's because they've lived in a way which has made these concepts into a reality. Rituals are very powerful if you understand what's going on. I mean, you have to know what the meaning is. You have to, our nuns, for example, they do rituals not very long, 3 or 4 hours at the most. But still, every year they have a 2-month retreat, and during that time they do the rituals which they do every month. They do a 2-month retreat on it, so that they understand what they're really doing, you know, and they meditate while they're doing the ritual. And then it becomes it's a practice. I mean, if you know what the ritual is actually saying, it's just a meditation. You know, now you see yourself as this, and in the sky you see all this, and lights come in, lights go out, then you do this, then you make offerings, then you do prayers, then this is happening, and that is happening. It's not just, you know, it's a whole visualization. And that transforms the mind. And so if you're doing it for hours and hours and days, which some of them are, they really, you enter a different state of consciousness after a while. I mean, they only do it because it works. They wouldn't do it otherwise. And all our nuns, when we say, well, now you've finished your basic studies, what do you want to do? Most of them opted to learn more rituals. I said, don't you want to go in retreat? Well, later, now we want to do ritual. So, it must work.
I was just wondering about like desire and attachment. I think those are two things that we feel very strongly in the West. I'm going back to England in a few days, and I have to find work, and I'll start living my kind of ordinary life again. Excuse me. And I'm kind of starting to get to grips, I think, with the idea of illusion and everything being impermanent. I'm just wondering, how can I kind of continue to develop that, you know, with living like a normal life in the West? How can you kind of, I don't know, it's just such a thing to get your head around, isn't it? And how do you keep reminding yourself that things are impermanent and, you know, everything you were talking about? How do we remind ourselves while living in the ordinary world that everything is impermanent? Yes. My dear, it's all around you. It's all around you. People are up, then they are down, people die continually, people are in relationships, then they're out of relationships, then they're into other relationships. It's all change, it's all impermanent, you know, and this is why the Buddha said that your attachment and clinging brings grief, because if we hold things lightly, gently, then as they change and flow, it doesn't hurt us. But if we grasp it like this, then when they go,
it causes a lot of pain.
I think a good example is relationships.
Absolutely.
People.
Absolutely.
And so, with the idea of grasping, I think I do try to not grasp too tightly, but you know, you do build relationships with people, with your family, with your partner, you know, so surely there is a certain amount of attachment or, I don't know, care that's necessary.
Well, care is one thing, and love and kindness is one thing. That's fine. I mean, that's really good. I mean, the problem is when we then say, therefore, you have to be mine. And you have to do what I want you to do, or at least, you know, there's this, if you leave, I can't exist. You know, this is what causes the problem. Not the relationship, and not the loving, but this holding on. You know, this is what you have to work on. And it's not something which, you know, again, it's like you read about it, you hear about it, you think about it, but then you have to go away and practice it.
Do you think that people can really become kind of enlightened? And do you think people can really stick on this path enough and be disciplined enough while living in their Western lifestyle? Because I sometimes feel I just need to go to a cave for 15 years and that'll be the only way I can really, truly follow this path. And I do want to, but there are so many distractions.
Okay. Okay. The point is that we cannot hope to really transform our hearts into a practice unless we take everything onto the path. That means not just meditation, not just study, not just all the going to centers, reading Dharma books. That's Dharma practice. The rest of my time, my relationships, my work, my hanging out with my friends, that's so much worldly activity. If we divide like that, we will never get anywhere. Because the amount of time which we can actually, in the West, give to formal Dharma practice compared with the amount of time which we give to seemingly worldly practice is too disproportionate. So what do? Either we lock our door and we go into retreat for 3 years, or we say, I think I'm not seeing this clearly. We have to take our daily life, which means everything, our relationships, our colleagues, our family, the people we meet on the underground or in the buses, everything we do, our cooking, our cleaning our teeth, everything has to be a practice, right? This is why I go around the world talking again and again about the 6 paramitas. The 6 paramitas are the 6 transcendental activities needed to attain Buddhahood, right? That a bodhisattva will undertake. So these are generosity, kindness, giving, not just giving material things and money, but giving your time. If somebody is unhappy, giving time, helping, being generous in your heart and your hands. Patience, that's a wonderful one. We're better to learn than in the West. You know, in traffic jams and in dealing with, you know, your friends and your colleagues and your partners and your family, we're better to learn tolerance. Ethics. Leading a life in such a way that you cause no harm to anyone. not taking the life of any being, not just human beings, all beings, their lives are equally important to themselves. Not taking any property which doesn't belong to you. Being very, very scrupulous in sexual relationships so that you do not do any harm to others or to yourself. Taking responsibility for your own sexuality. Being truthful, being kind, spreading harmony with your words instead of disharmony. Not indulging too much in gossip and idle talk. And being careful of your mind by abstaining as much as possible from that which distorts the mind, meaning alcohol and drugs. In other words, even in the midst of a big city, you can live a life which is as harmless as you can make it. And recognizing that every single person that you meet wants in their heart to be happy. They don't want to be hurt. Just as you don't want to be hurt, you want to be happy. So recognizing that, every single person you meet, even if only for a moment, just send them goodwill. Smile. Say something nice. Just, even if they're not nice to you, be nice to them. Who cares whether they're nice to you or not? But be nice to them, recognizing that even when people are difficult, it's because inside they're not happy. And be nice to yourself too. Send yourself good messages. Send yourself loving kindness. Send yourself compassion. Okay? Enthusiasm is a very important motive on the path. We have to really want to transform inside. And we can only transform if, as much as possible, we really use our life as our Dharma practice. In the morning, get up earlier, do some practice before you start. Something simple, but get yourself going. During the day, try to be conscious. Try to, if you're in a car, if you're a computer, bring the attention back to the breath. Bring the attention back to just being here, even for a few seconds. And considering how much total garbage is put out by the media, contain it. You do not have to read every newspaper. You do not have to look endlessly at television. You do not have to put something useful into the mind, okay? And remember the Buddha's advice about good friends. What was the first thing after sitting under trees for 7 weeks? What was the first thing the Buddha did? He got up, he went to Saranat, and he started a Sangha. He started a community of like-minded people. So, get yourself connected with a community of like-minded people. People, meaning people who have the same values. Doesn't mean you necessarily have to join a Dharma group, but associate with people who have good values, because we are very, very influenced by the company we keep.